Turkish President Recep Erdogan did not comment on the downing of an unidentified drone over the Black Sea on December 15th, but called on Russia and Ukraine to stop attacking ships. According to him, striking commercial and civilian vessels does not benefit either side.
By strictly adhering to the Montreux Convention, we have prevented the spread of the war to the Black Sea. However, the recent mutual attacks pose a serious threat to the safety of navigation in the Black Sea. Attacks on commercial and civilian vessels benefit no one. We are clearly conveying our warnings on this issue to both sides.
The Montreux Convention, signed in 1936, granted Turkey full rights to control the Bosphorus, Çanakkale, and Dardanelles Straits. The President of Turkey has repeatedly stated the importance of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty for Turkey.
Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty are very important to us. We have demonstrated Turkey's respect for Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty on all platforms and continue to do so.
The President of Turkey is convinced that Crimea should be returned to Ukraine, as this is a requirement of international law. During his speech at the Crimea platform, he stated that the occupation of Crimea has further deepened the suffering of the Crimean Tatars, who experienced deportation 80 years ago. He emphasized that ensuring the security and well-being of the Crimean Tatars is one of the priorities of Turkey's foreign policy.
For 80 years, the pain of the Crimean Tatar tragedy, who were forcibly expelled from their homeland, has not subsided. The annexation of Crimea, which Turkey has opposed and not recognized from the very first day, has only further worsened their suffering.
At the same time, the Turkish leader added that he is satisfied with the legal measures introduced by the Ukrainian government to protect the rights of the Crimean Tatars.
Recep Erdogan addressed Ukraine and Russia after the incident with the drone over the Black Sea. According to the President of Turkey, UAV attacks pose a serious threat to the safety of navigation in the Black Sea. And now, more details in our report. You are watching Glavred channel. I'm your host Yevgeny Serov. Like and subscribe to the channel. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan did not comment on the downing of an unidentified drone over the Black Sea, which occurred back on December 15th, but called on Russia and Ukraine to stop attacking ships. He said this during a speech to Turkish ambassadors in Ankara, according to Daily Sabah. According to his considered opinion, deliberately striking commercial or civilian vessels does not genuinely benefit either of the warring sides in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. By strictly adhering to the Montreux Convention, we have prevented the spread of the war to the Black Sea. However, recent mutual attacks pose a serious threat to the safety of navigation in the Black Sea. Attacks on commercial and civilian vessels benefit no one. We are clearly conveying our warnings on this issue to both sides, the President of Turkey noted. The publication recalled that the Montreux Convention, concluded in 1936, granted Turkey full rights to control the Bosphorus and Çanakkale, or Dardanelles, Straits. It provides complete freedom of navigation for civilian vessels in peacetime and restricted access for military ships. However, Turkey has the right to deny entry to warships from countries involved in a conflict, provided that it is not directly participating in that conflict. Until now, the convention has ensured Turkey's maritime security. But in recent weeks, the Black Sea has become a hotspot for attacks by Russia and Ukraine, which have spread into Turkish territorial waters, the article emphasized. According to the country's Ministry of Defense, Turkish F-16 fighter jets shot down an uncontrolled drone that was flying in from the Black Sea. The device was detected and tracked as part of routine procedures and was identified as an unmanned aerial vehicle that had lost control, the ministry's statement added. Turkey dispatched F-16 fighter jets, and to prevent any negative consequences, it was shot down in a safe area away from populated locations.
December 15th, Turkey shot down an unidentified drone over the Black Sea. This was reported by the country's Ministry of Defense on its page on X. According to the ministry, the drone was approaching Turkish airspace. In order to prevent possible negative consequences, a decision was made to destroy the drone. The drone was taken down by F-16 fighter jets. It is unknown who owned the UAV.
It was determined that the aerial object in question was an unmanned aerial vehicle that had gone out of control. To avoid any negative consequences, it was shot down in a safe area outside the populated locality.
Turkey is one of the few countries that responds to threats quickly and decisively. For example, in 2015, the Turkish Air Force shot down a Russian Su-24 bomber on the border with Syria after it violated Turkish airspace, resulting in the death of one of the two pilots. At that time, the Turkish military reported that before shooting down the Russian plane, they had warned it 10 times about violating their airspace. And the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, stated that the actions to destroy the combat aircraft were not directed against any specific country, but were a defense of Turkey's sovereign territory in accordance with the rules. It should be noted that since September of this year, UAVs and even military aircraft have been spotted over various European countries. Initially, about 20 Russian drones violated Polish airspace, and on September 19th, 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets entered Estonian airspace. Drones have also been repeatedly spotted over several Scandinavian countries.
They crash, explode, burn on airfields, and demonstrate complete incompetence on the battlefield, even though they were supposed to strike fear into the entire Western world and be the flagship of Russian fighter jets. At the same time, you can't completely write it off, because a recent upgrade to these aircraft has allowed them to use Russia's best long-range missiles to date.
Well, the missile is quite effective. Let's just say we've suffered losses from this missile.
However, is that enough to fight not Soviet but Western aircraft? F-16.
With an energetic maneuver, it can simply evade this missile at low altitude.
And are its own capabilities enough to survive encounters with advanced Ukrainian solutions in this war? Such as, for example, GUR drones, which for the first time in history brought down a Russian fighter jet using just a drone. But today, let's talk about the aircraft. The Su-30 and all its modifications. What is this fighter capable of? Why does it keep crashing and exploding in the hands of Russian pilots time and again? What caused the Su's catastrophe as early as November 2025? And also, who would win if the Su-30 were to meet Ukrainian F-16s in a real air battle? We'll talk about all this in the new episode of Arsenal right now. Discussions about Russian Su-30s in the press usually arise not because of successful operations, but due to the numerous incidents involving this fighter. That's what happened this time as well. Another flight, another failure. On November 13th, a Russian Federation Su-30 combat aircraft crashed. The plane crashed in the Republic of Karelia region. Both crew members were killed. The crash occurred in a forested area, reportedly not far from the city airport. The enemy's Telegram channel Flybomber reported that it was a Su-30SM, a two-seat heavy fourth-generation fighter. One of the main theories for the crash is pilot error.
Every Su-30SM aircraft is worth its weight in gold. It's all about the components. They're hard to obtain by circumventing sanctions. Moreover, as far as I know, Su-30SMs as such are either not being produced at all or are produced in extremely limited numbers.
But these planes crashed not only because of pilot errors. For example, this summer the GUR demonstrated that Russian Sukhois now have another threat to fear. Namely, Ukrainian drones, which for the first time in history carried out an operation to destroy a moving military aircraft using a drone. Specifically, the head of the GUR, Kirilo Budanov, clarified in an interview with The War Zone that 3 unmanned Magura V-7 boats took part in the attack, 2 of which fired at the aircraft. At the same time, 2 Russian Su-30SM attack aircraft were destroyed. One of the crews was killed, the second managed to eject. The Russians immediately sent a civilian vessel after him, hoping that Ukraine would not violate the rules of war and would refrain from firing on civilians.
Even though the Ukrainians had plenty of opportunities to destroy this civilian cargo ship along with the Russian military crew, they did not take advantage of them. They saw how the crew was being evacuated. They circled around the crew, who were struggling in the water. But nevertheless, they did not fire a single shot, neither at the cargo ship nor at the crew.
It also seems that the situation regarding which missiles the Ukrainian Magura drones used has become clearer. In particular, a photo appeared online showing a naval drone equipped with an American AIM-9 air-to-air missile. Earlier versions of the Baker were armed with Soviet R-73 missiles.
What is its uniqueness? Well, really, it's that this is a surface remote-controlled system. Specifically remote-controlled, this is very important, which shot down a manned object. And if we talk about the cost of the Magura, which is around $250,000 to $300,000, and the cost of a Russian Su-30, which is $40 to $50 million, you can calculate how many times cheaper the means of destruction was compared to the expensive target.
Besides the obvious result, the destruction of Russian aircraft, this attack brought another advantage to the Ukrainian armed forces. The enemy may not be completely suppressed, but they are definitely terrified. Having lost 2 comrades and apparently, after hearing about 2 more who unexpectedly ended up swimming in the Black Sea, you can only imagine the mindset with which they will now fly missions over the Black Sea area.
The crews of Russian military aircraft flying over the Black Sea now fully realize that they are no longer safe. Just because they cannot see us or our advanced weapons on their targeting radars does not mean those weapons are not actually there. And it was precisely these weapons, these types of armaments, that ended up in the sights of their aircraft.
It's not any easier, by the way, for the pilot's command either. After all, even if the radars detect Ukrainian Magurs, it no longer automatically means an order will be given to scramble the aircraft. The leadership of the Russian Air Force now understands all too well that it's far from certain the next pilots will get away unscathed.
Every time the Ukrainians launch an operation in the Black Sea, it becomes an extremely difficult choice for Russia. What should they risk losing? Oil and gas platforms, or perhaps some other installations in the Black Sea? Or, for example, their assets in Crimea, because these unmanned boats can also carry drones. In other words, they're like mini aircraft carriers.
Or maybe they'll have to lose another helicopter or a Su-30SM. However, the Kremlin has no intention of writing off the Russian Sukhoi just yet. On the contrary, at the Vish, Russia has upgraded its Su-30 SM-2 fighter jet to be able to use long-range air-to-air missiles.
The R-37 missiles, long-range missiles with a range of 300 kilometers, were previously carried by 2 types of aircraft. The standard armament was the MiG-31BM, which carried 4 of these missiles. And as an alternative or additional armament, the main Russian Air Force fighters, the Su-35S, also carried them.
However, in their efforts to promote their military-industrial complex, the Russians, as always, went overboard. The Invincible duo, the newest fighter jet paired with one of the world's longest-range missiles, turned out to be one-off prototypes with highly exaggerated capabilities.
Beginning from approximately the years 2021 to 2022, the Russians have established serial production of the new Su-30SM fighter model. This is the Su-30SM-2 model, and they have added to it, on the Su-30SM-2, the long-range R-37M air-to-air missiles, which have a maximum range of up to 300 kilometers, although that range is clearly considered to be exaggerated. According to Ukrainian Air Force sources, the maximum recorded engagement range was actually about 177 kilometers.
However, the desire to reach our pilots from a long distance hasn't gone anywhere. Additional equipment was brought in, which ultimately ended in another failure for Russian aviation.
The Russians tried to use a 50 flying radar planes for this, but as we know, they're no longer in fashion. Now they're taking a break. After 2 of these planes were shot down, the rest have become a rare sight.
But will F-16 fighters be able to respond to the Russians in any way? Experts assure us that they will. Even though, on paper, the long-range race is completely lost, it is still possible to counter 300-kilometer missiles with weapons that have a range of 160 kilometers.
The F-16 does not have any long-range missiles, but it does have medium-range missiles, which are called AMRAAMs. So, if we get these AMRAAM missiles with a range of 160 or 150 kilometers, then yes, the capabilities of the F-16s will be quite comparable to those of Russian fighters armed with long-range missiles.
The question arises, how? However, it's actually quite simple. By mostly operating at low altitudes, Ukrainian pilots even today do not allow themselves to be detected from long distances. In reality, air combat usually begins at a distance of about 150 kilometers, where both types of missiles have enough range, and other characteristics become a priority.
The AMRAAM missile is much more maneuverable and is much more effective at hitting targets than the huge, low maneuverability R-37 missile. In other words, the F-16 can simply evade this missile at low altitude with an energetic maneuver. But Russian aircraft, which typically fly at medium and high altitudes, will not be able to evade the AMRAAM missile.
In addition to maneuverability, the F-16 also outperforms the Russian Su in terms of defensive systems and radar visibility. It
has a very small radar cross-section, so it will be very difficult to detect it even at short ranges. This is a very maneuverable and agile aircraft, and I really hope that it is equipped with a modern, highly effective onboard defense system that will, in practice, jam and disrupt the guidance of Russian-guided missiles.
As a result, if used correctly, an F-16 may prevent an air battle from happening at all.
If the F-16s continue to operate at low altitudes, flying close to the ground and blending in against the background of the terrain below, then it could turn out that if they also receive long-range missiles, advanced weaponry that can strike targets from a significant distance along with the aircraft themselves, it could turn out that they shoot down the Russian R-37 missile carriers before those even spot, lock onto, and launch their missiles at the F-16s.
Did you like this video? Then don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our Arsenal channel. The link is in the description below the video.